While you were on vacation, we were working overtime.
Once Upon a Time in America is now hailed as one of the greatest gangster films ever made, yet it flopped so badly on release that its cast watched their masterpiece vanish overnight. One of them died of a heroin overdose before it even opened. One was secretly a real spy. One child star grew up to prosecute criminals. And the legend at its center is still working at 82. Where did life take all of them?
Words from a union boss.
Jennifer Connelly, young Deborah. She's the graceful young dancer Deborah, twirling alone in a dusty back room.
His legs are as pillars of marble, in pants so dirty they stand by themselves.
While a love-struck boy watches through a peephole, the first and deepest love of the young Noodles. Barely a teenager, a former child model in one of her very first roles, holding the screen against an army of grown men on a chaotic Sergio Leone set. Most child actors fade. Jennifer Connelly did the opposite. She kept working through her teens, but she also did something almost unheard of in Hollywood.
Really?
Yeah, I was in a tent. I had like a little, they came with washing water every morning to my...
You went a month without bathing?
Yeah, I did.
She got serious about her education, studying at both Yale and Stanford. Then she came back and rebuilt herself as a fearless dramatic actress, taking dark, demanding roles instead of coasting on the pretty ingenue she could have been. And it carried her all the way to the top. In 2002, that little girl from the dusty dance studio stood on the most famous stage in the world and accepted the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for A Beautiful Mind. From a small, early part in a movie that flopped to an Oscar in her hands. She never slowed down either. You've seen her since in Top Gun Maverick and headlining major series. She's alive, thriving, and one of the most respected actresses working today. The youngest face in this cast climbed higher than anyone. But while her story soared, the very next one sinks like a stone. A man who never lived long enough to learn whether he'd made it. James Hayden, Patsy. Patsy was one of Noodles' inner circle. Handsome, easy grinning, right in the thick of the brotherhood.
All down in black and white in the company books. You're the company. You and Patsy and Cockeye. Grave diggers and equal partners.
Everyone who watched James Hayden work in this film walked away certain that a new star was about to break. He'd earned that shot the hard way. Hayden was a Vietnam veteran who'd served as a combat medic, then come home and clawed his way up through the brutal world of New York theater. Along the way, he became close friends with one of the biggest actors alive, Al Pacino, who believed in him so completely he fought to get Hayden the role of Manny in Scarface, the part that ultimately went to Stephen Bauer. By 1983, Hayden was electrifying Broadway audiences every night in David Mamet's American Buffalo, beside Pacino himself playing a heroin addict.
Come on, come on. Now make up your mind.
The role cut far too close, because off the stage, Hayden was quietly losing the very same fight. On the night of November 8th, 1983, just hours after another standing ovation, he died of a heroin overdose in his Manhattan apartment. He was 29. They found him slumped over his kitchen sink, the phone still in his hand. He'd been talking to his estranged wife when his voice simply stopped. He had already finished his scenes for Once Upon a Time in America, but the film wouldn't open for another 7 months. He never saw a single frame of the performance that might have changed everything. His friend Mickey Rourke was so shattered, he dedicated his next film to Hayden's memory.
We're not asking you to take orders, Joe. We're telling you. Now go ahead.
It's the cruelest what if in the whole story. And from a man who never got his second act, we turn to a man whose secret life was so outrageous, almost nobody on that set had any idea who they were standing beside. Let's turn to someone who had nothing but time. The actress who played the grown-up face of Noodles' oldest dream. The woman that dancing girl behind the peephole finally became. Her career took a turn no one in 1984 could have predicted. Elizabeth McGovern, Deborah. Here she is at last, the adult Deborah Gelly, the elegant, unreachable woman Noodles loves across an entire lifetime and never truly gets to keep. Where Jennifer Connelly was the girl twirling in the dusty studio, Elizabeth McGovern is who that girl grows into. The dream hardened into a real woman with her own ambitions, sitting across a restaurant table telling Noodles she's leaving for Hollywood and there's no room in the plan for him.
Where'd you learn all them parlez-vous français dishes? Who's teaching you that stuff?
I mean, Sugar Daddy tries to teach me how to act.
She'd arrived almost fully formed. Juilliard trained, she made her film debut in Ordinary People at 19. And the very next year, barely 20, she was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, playing the scandal-soaked beauty Evelyn Nesbit in Ragtime. That performance is the whole reason she's in this movie at all. De Niro wanted a New York native with a real Brooklyn accent for Deborah, but Leone had seen her in Ragtime and wanted her so badly, he simply overruled his star. She was the actress the director refused to compromise on. Then her story did something none of her American peers expected. It picked up and left the country. McGovern fell in love with a British director, Simon Curtis, married him, and quietly rebuilt her entire life in England, raising a family far from the Hollywood machine. She didn't flame out and she didn't vanish. She relocated.
I mean, well, for one thing, my husband, I would give anything to work with a director like him.
Yeah.
Sure.
He just happens to be the guy I take home. Right?
And decades later, that decision handed her a second fame even bigger than the first. A whole new global audience knows her not as Deborah at all, but as Cora, Countess of Grantham, the warm American heart of Downton Abbey, a role that earned her Emmy and Golden Globe nominations and ran from the series straight through the films, the last as recently as 2025. Somewhere along the way, she also taught herself guitar and started fronting her own band, Sadie and the Hotheads, releasing real albums. An Oscar nominee at 20, a countess in her 50s, a working musician in between. She's alive in her mid-60s and arguably more beloved now than at any point on that 1982 set. Proof that walking away from Hollywood isn't always an ending. Sometimes it's just intermission. And speaking of people on that set who were not at all what they appeared to be, there's a name buried in the credits, listed as nothing more than a chauffeur. Nobody filming alongside him had the faintest idea that this quiet bystander was hiding one of the most outrageous double lives in the entire history of the movies. Arnon Milchan, Chopper. There's a chauffeur in the credits named Arnon Milchan. Blink, and you'd miss him entirely. Just another hopeful, you'd assume, grabbing a moment on a famous director's set. Not even close.
I'm all the way from Detroit. They asked me to do him a favor. I don't want to do it for him.
Milchan was the film's producer, the money that got Leone's dream made. And that's the least remarkable thing about him. For decades, there were only whispers. Then, in 2013, he sat down on Israeli television and calmly confirmed every wild rumor at once. From the 1960s into the 1980s, the exact years he was building his Hollywood empire, he had secretly worked as an Israeli intelligence operative and an international arms dealer, helping his country quietly acquire technology for its nuclear weapons program. This is not a metaphor. The very year this film was shooting, the FBI suspected him of smuggling nuclear triggers, and agents would later raid the American front company tied to his network. He never apologized for any of it. In Hollywood, they don't like working with an arms dealer, he admitted, then added that for a young man in his 20s, getting to live like James Bond for his country was simply too thrilling to refuse.
This must be your friend Noodles.
Noodles, say hello to Mr. Minaldi.
Hey, Noodles, how are you?
And the dabbling producer? He went on to found Regency Enterprises and make Pretty Woman, Heat, JFK, LA Confidential, Fight Club, 12 Years a Slave, The Revenant, a spy, an arms dealer, and one of the most successful film producers who ever lived. The same man hiding in plain sight as a chauffeur. He's alive today, a billionaire in his 80s. That's the most unbelievable life in this cast. But the most unexpected turn belongs to someone else, and you'd never guess in 100 tries what a child actor from this film grew up to do. Rusty Jacobs, David. The young Max, the boy version of the gang's ambitious schemer, the kid whose hunger will one day blow the whole brotherhood apart, was played by a teenager named Rusty Jacobs. He carried real dramatic weight. He had already appeared in the hit film Taps, and every door in Hollywood stood open in front of him.
Give me 6 copies. Drop your pants and I'll stick it to you again.
He closed them. Jacobs walked away from acting almost entirely, went to law school at the University of North Carolina, and became an assistant district attorney, a real-life prosecutor, standing up in courtrooms, putting criminals away. Sit with that for a second. The boy who played a baby gangster grew up to spend his days locking up the real thing. Today, he's reinvented himself yet again, working as a public radio journalist in North Carolina, telling true stories for a living instead of acting out fake ones. He's alive, he's well, and he built a meaningful life about as far from Hollywood as a person can get. No scandal, no tragedy, just a man who decided fame wasn't the point.
Cap one, we the best escorts you ever gonna get.
I found Gula Mom. Let's escort your mother's ass out of it.
That's the rare happy detour. The next story snaps us straight back to heartbreak. A beloved actor riding high, right at the top of his game, cut down with no warning at all. Treat Williams, Jimmy O'Donnell. Jimmy O'Donnell, the fiery labor leader the gang muscles up against, was a rare man of principle in a story crawling with crooks, and Treat Williams played him.
The bodies of Philip Stein, Maximilian Berkovich, Patrick Goldberg were already spoken for.
By the time he made this film, Williams was already a star, and he'd stay one for nearly half a century. He broke out in the movie version of Hair, earned serious acclaim in Prince of the City, and became a whole generation's comfort watch as the warm small-town doctor on Everwood, with later runs on Blue Bloods and Chicago Fire. At 71, he wasn't fading in the slightest. He'd just signed on to a brand new Ryan Murphy series and was, by every account, busy, beloved, and thriving.
But that's beside the point. The important thing right now is that you and I straighten out these transfers of authority.
Then, on a June afternoon in 2023, he was riding his motorcycle on a quiet Vermont road when an SUV turned left directly across his path. He had no time to react. He was thrown from the bike. A bystander reached him and found him conscious and talking, but the injuries were catastrophic. He was airlifted to a hospital and died that night. The driver was later charged. His family said he was full of love for his life and his craft right to the very end, which only makes it harder to hear. A sudden, senseless loss. And as cruel as it is, he wasn't the only man in this cast taken out of nowhere on an ordinary day. The next one is so grimly ironic you'll barely believe it. Richard Bright, Chicken Joe. Chicken Joe is a small role here, but that face belongs to one of the most iconic enforcers in movie history.
Listen to me, you socialist asshole. We don't give a good fart about the socialist workers and their movement.
Richard Bright played Al Neary, the silent, stone-cold bodyguard to the Corleone family across all three Godfather films. He was the man in the boat, the man at the door, the cold presence who dealt out death without ever changing his expression. His career was long and steady, dozens of films and shows across decades, right up through The Sopranos. He was the dependable character actor who never became a household name, but turned up in everything. Always convincing, always exactly right. Then came the bitterest irony imaginable. In February 2006, the man who built a career playing one of cinema's deadliest killers was crossing the street in his own Manhattan neighborhood when a private bus struck and killed him. He was 68. And the chilling detail, according to reports at the time, the driver didn't even realize he'd hit anyone and kept going into the night. A screen assassin, gone in an instant, a few steps from his own front door.
Now it's 6:35, and I ain't got a damn thing to do.
That's 3 losses in a row, so let's change the temperature, because the next man's death came at the end of a long, rich life, and his real story is genuinely inspiring. You know his face, you just know it from a different ring entirely. Burt Young, Joe. Behind the gangster named Joe stood an actor the whole world adored as someone else, Paulie, Rocky Balboa's grumbling, beer-soaked brother-in-law. A role that earned Burt Young an Academy Award nomination. Here's what few people realized. Young wasn't playing tough, he was tough.
Every policy, name it, dogs, house, wife, life, anything.
I'm drinking with the boys one night.
Before Hollywood found him, he was a United States Marine. He'd lied about his age to enlist at 16, and then a professional boxer, fighting under the legendary trainer Cus D'Amato, the very man who'd later mold a teenage Mike Tyson into the most feared fighter on earth. So when Young glowered across a table at De Niro, that menace ran bone deep, earned in real fights. But the truth of the man was the contradiction. Off camera, this ex-Marine prizefighter was a gentle, soulful artist, a serious painter and a writer, a man his own manager described as carrying real poignancy in his soul. He worked steadily and beloved for decades, the tough guy everyone secretly cherished. Burt Young died in October 2023 at 83, mourned by everyone who'd ever shared a frame with him.
Be easy with the girl. I mean that, be easy with the girl.
The next man's road to that movie set might be the unlikeliest of anyone, because he didn't even become an actor until most people are deep into their careers. Wait until you hear what he did before Hollywood. Danny Aiello, Police Chief Aiello. The crooked police chief even carries the actor's own name, and Danny Aiello's real life is the ultimate late bloomer story.
What do you mean by that?
They say management expressed their thanks for the birthday present for the baby.
The part that stuns people, Aiello didn't become an actor until he was pushing 40. Before that, he was the president of a labor union and a working man who'd haul baggage on the Greyhound bus line. A poor kid from the Bronx, raised partly by a legally blind mother scraping by on welfare checks. Acting wasn't a childhood dream. He practically fell into it as a grown man with mouths to feed. And then he made up for every lost year at a dead sprint. What he built is a filmography most lifelong actors would envy. He invented, right there on the spot, the immortal line, "Michael Corleone says hello," while garroting a man in The Godfather Part 2. He melted hearts in Moonstruck opposite Cher, and he earned an Oscar nomination as Sal, the pizzeria owner at the burning heart of Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. Not bad for a man who started in middle age. Danny Aiello died in December 2019 at 86, having packed 2 lifetimes of work into the back half of one.
I'm chief of police, not chief of the people.
Was there any violence on the part of the strikers to justify your actions?
My motto is prevention. Prevention, not repression.
But you let...
Now let's lighten things considerably, because the man who played the brains of the gang is not only alive and well, he's one of the genuinely smartest people Hollywood has ever produced. James Woods, Max, the restless, calculating mind at the center of the film's great betrayal, handed James Woods arguably the finest role of his career. Sergio Leone reportedly thought so too. And the intelligence wasn't acting. Woods is famous in the industry for an almost intimidating intellect. He got into the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he studied political science, before throwing it all away to chase acting.
Hey, go fuck yourself. Mind your own business.
We do our fucking business together, and fucking broads do not get in the way, and you know it.
That gamble paid off enormously. He became one of the most electric performers of his generation, able to make charm and menace live in the same breath, and he earned 2 Academy Award nominations along the way, for Salvador and Ghosts of Mississippi. These days, there's a twist to his fame. Woods has become almost as well known for his blunt, combustible presence on social media as for anything he's done on screen. A once quiet character actor turned one of the loudest voices online. Love him or not, he still commands attention exactly the way Max did. And he's right here, alive, sharp, and unmistakable in his late 70s. From a survivor who never left the spotlight, we go to a woman who did the precise opposite. A star who walked away so completely that fans have spent years wondering whatever became of her. Tuesday Weld, Carol. Carol gets pulled into the gang's violent world, equal parts victim and accomplice. And the woman who played her, Tuesday Weld, was once one of the most famous child stars in America.
Where is he? Where is he hiding?
Her real story is the cautionary tale beneath all that glamour. Weld was modeling as a toddler, working to support her family before she could read, and she suffered a nervous breakdown before she even reached her teens. The whole brutal machine of early fame grinding away at her. She grew into a gifted adult actress, good enough to earn an Oscar nomination for Looking for Mr. Goodbar. And yet she seemed to regard fame itself with open contempt, turning down roles other actresses would have begged for. Then, piece by piece, she did the most defiant thing a star can do. She simply vanished. No comebacks, no reality shows, no farewell tour. She erased her own public footprint almost entirely. So, is she still with us? Yes, Tuesday Weld is alive, in her early 80s, living about as far from a red carpet as a human being can get.
Can't you see you're ruining the mood? We made our deal. So take a walk.
She escaped Hollywood on her own terms and never looked back. She got out clean. The next leading lady wasn't granted that kind of peace. Her story ends in a heartbreak that has nothing to do with the movies at all. Darlene Flugel, Eve. Eve, Noodles' girlfriend, is gunned down in her own bed by killers hunting for him, one of the film's coldest, cruelest moments. Darlene Flugel brought her to life.
By the way, I appreciate everything you did for my family.
Forget it. It's your dough. It's all down in black and white in the company books.
In reality, she was a knockout. A Ford agency model turned fixture of 1980s cinema. She was the doomed informant in To Live and Die in L.A., Billy Crystal's ex-wife in Running Scared, Kirk Douglas's love interest in Tough Guys. For a stretch there, you simply could not miss her. Then, as the leading roles thinned, she did something quietly admirable. Rather than chase fading fame, she reinvented herself as a film professor, spending years teaching the next generation of actors in Florida. What came next is the part that truly hurts. At just 56 years old, Darlene was diagnosed with early-onset Alzheimer's disease. The woman who'd spent years teaching young performers how to hold a scene in memory slowly, cruelly lost her own. She died in 2017 at 64, far too young for an ending like that. Let's pull back toward the light, because not everyone here met tragedy or disappeared. Some just kept their heads down and built long, steady, working lives, starting with a face you've absolutely seen 100 times without ever naming. William Forsythe, Cockeye. Cockeye is the gang member with the harmonica, all swagger and bad teeth and bottomless loyalty. And William Forsythe turned that unforgettable mug, equal parts menace and warmth, into one of the most durable careers in the business. His story is simple. He never stopped.
I don't know.
Whatever you want, buddy.
All right, well, I guess William, because that's what you're eyeing.
William is my name.
That's what you're eyeing.
For 4 decades, he's been Hollywood's favorite heavy and lovable goon. He was in The Untouchables. He chewed scenery as the chilling butcher Manny Horvitz on Boardwalk Empire. He stacked up the kind of filmography most working actors would trade an arm for. Never the name above the title, always the guy who quietly makes the scene better than it deserved to be. And in a story this full of loss, his ending is refreshingly plain. He's still here. William Forsythe is alive and well, in his late 60s, still acting, still that face you can't place but never forget. No tragedy, no vanishing act, just a craftsman who kept showing up and got to grow old doing the work he loved. His old Gangster co-star took nearly the same path. Relentless, unglamorous, remarkably long. Here's the man who, on screen, set the whole tragedy in motion. James Russo, Bugsy. Bugsy is the older neighborhood bully whose cruelty kicks off everything. A boy's death, young Noodles' first prison stretch, the moment the dream first curdles. A small role that detonates the entire film, and James Russo lit the fuse. What became of him is the story of the ultimate working actor. Russo turned into one of those everywhere-at-once character men you've seen in countless films without ever catching the name. Beverly Hills Cop, Donnie Brasco, My Own Private Idaho, Django Unchained. The man has piled up well over 200 credits, decade after decade, flatly refusing to quit. And like Forsythe, he's still grinding. James Russo is alive, in his early 70s, still taking roles, still that coiled, intense presence. Two members of the original gang, both still standing, both still working. Living proof that not every story from this set ends at a graveside. Before we reach the man at the very center of it all, let's honor one last face. An old world legend Leone carried across the ocean, along with the smaller players time has quietly forgotten. Mario Brega, Mandy. Mandy looks like he wandered straight off a dusty western set, and Mario Brega did exactly that. He was one of Sergio Leone's most loyal players, a hulking fixture in the Clint Eastwood Dollars pictures and Once Upon a Time in the West. When Leone finally made his great American epic, he brought his old friend along for one last ride. Brega died in 1994 at 70, a familiar face from a vanished era. And an honest word on the smaller players, Willie the Ape, Krieger the Thug, Max's mother. Most slipped quietly back into ordinary lives, leaving barely a trace in the public record. And I won't invent stories where none exist. One lovely footnote, though, the reporter was played by Tandy Cronin, daughter of two genuine Hollywood legends, Jessica Tandy and Hume Cronin. Even the bit parts in this film hid a little history, which leaves exactly one man. The face at the dead center of the whole story, the dreamer, the killer, the ghost haunting his own memories. And unlike so many of the people we've followed, he is still very much with us. Robert De Niro, Noodles. Then there's Noodles himself, the heart and soul of the entire film, the boy who falls in love through a peephole, the young man who goes to prison for his friends, the aging gangster drifting through an opium haze, drowning in regret over a single unforgivable choice. It's a vast, devastating performance spanning 50 years of one man's life, and Robert De Niro has called this one of his personal favorites among everything he's ever done.
Well, I'm very curious because I haven't seen it in a long time, and I don't know. Marty told me, Scorsese, that 20 minutes have been added to it, so.
To grasp what it meant for him to anchor this epic, you have to remember who De Niro already was by 1984. He'd exploded onto the scene in the early 70s, electrifying audiences in Mean Streets and Taxi Driver. He'd won his first Academy Award playing the young Vito Corleone in The Godfather Part 2, performing almost entirely in Italian. Then came Raging Bull, for which he physically transformed his own body, packing on 60 pounds to play the aging Jake LaMotta, winning his second Oscar. He had become the gold standard, the actor every other actor measured themselves against, famous for an almost obsessive devotion to disappearing completely into a role. And he never coasted. After Noodles came Goodfellas, Casino, Cape Fear, Heat, where he finally shared the screen with Al Pacino. Then, decades on, he reinvented himself yet again, surprising everyone with his comic timing in the Meet the Parents films, co-founding the Tribeca Film Festival to help his beloved New York heal after 9/11, and continuing to deliver towering dramatic work in The Irishman and Killers of the Flower Moon, which earned him an Oscar nomination as recently as 2024. The reason this audience adores him is that he simply will not stop. Robert De Niro is alive, still working at the very top of the craft in his 80s, still commanding the screen the way he did half a century ago. He even began his 9th decade by becoming a father all over again, welcoming a new daughter. The gang he led to glory and ruin scattered to a dozen different fates, some to early graves, some to quiet anonymity, some to second lives nobody could have predicted. But the man at the very center of it all is right here, still standing, still working, still De Niro.